Hi, everyone. I'm Char Nolan, one of the chef instructors here at Rouxbe. Welcome to my kitchen on a beautiful, bright, and sunny day, almost in Philadelphia. Happy to see all of you here. Happy to share whatever news I have and also to look at the wonderful questions that have come in today. I have two things that I want to share with everyone, first of all, and I don't know if any of you are $1.25 Dollar Tree fans or anything like that, but I always check out the book section at the Dollar Tree. And I want to show you my two latest finds because they're both two books that I have wanted. And I like to read cookbooks. I like to learn about the author and I like to learn about their family origins and other things like that. Here's Deliciously Ella, beautiful cookbook, a New York Times bestseller at my $1.25 store. Wonderful book to read. So get to your dollar store and look around. And then the other one is one on mostly Indian cooking called Dada Eats, I believe. And pictures are absolutely, hold on a second, magnificent. And I love a good picture in a cookbook because it helps me to understand the direction of the recipe and how the ingredients are going to work together. So head to your local dollar store if you want to have some fun. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is sometimes I will get emails from students, graduates, who become somewhat disappointed because they wanted to graduate from Rouxbe and become a plant-based chef somewhere or be a plant-based educator somewhere, and that the positions sometimes just aren't there. So I want to let you know that after 10 years, I think that I have come to the top of the mountain, as they say, because a physician whom I highly respect here in Philadelphia is working on a grant from a spectacular organization. And he has come to some of my cooking classes just to observe and see what I do and how I come to develop a curriculum and other things like that. And he has asked me to join him not only to develop the curriculum, but to also co-teach these classes with him. So I'm here to say that just keep going. Whether you volunteer someplace, whether you take food to people, whether you bring food to the under-resourced or to whomever, there are many, many opportunities out there, and you just have to keep, as they say, pounding the pavement or stirring the pot. So those are my two inspirationals for today. We have a lot of questions, so I think that we will get into them right now. And our first question comes from Annette M, and she's curious about the Instapot. So the Instapot is wildly popular. I decide I need an Instapot, and the instructions tell you that the first thing you should make in the Instapot is water. And I have the manual in my hand, and my palms are sweaty, and I'm feeling as though I am landing a helicopter because they're a little technical from my point of view. So I use the Instapot for teaching classes, but found while teaching a class, it was just as easy to boil some water or to steam some vegetables or to do whatever than it was to put it in the Instapot. However, I will tell you the best thing that I used it for, and that was to take a pound of your favorite whole wheat pasta, throw it in the vessel, a 32 ounce of your favorite low sodium, oil-free pasta sauce, or one that you make. Muir Glen used to make a no oil pasta sauce. They no longer do that. So you put in 32 ounces of your pasta sauce and 32 ounces of water, and then you set it on 20 minutes, and miraculously the pasta would come out beautifully and delicious, and it tasted like homemade pasta. But every time I went to use it for someone else, I just wasn't into the technological aspect of using it. So what did I do? If any of you live in Connecticut and you are members of the Connecticut plant-based group led by Catherine O'Rourke, if you ever see Catherine O'Rourke at an event using an Instapot, I gave it to Catherine O'Rourke. So I think that they're totally up to you. I found flavors to be the same. I think cooking time was almost the same. And Um, I'm just not the best person. Also about cooking vegetables, one of the things that you might learn from the roasting vegetable assignment is that vegetables are best cooked when they're all the same size. So if you're going to throw in a bunch of vegetables at the same time, you want to put them, excuse me, on the fast method. There's a fast button on there, and you want to put it on there for 2 or 3 minutes, and then they will work for you. But I'm old school. I like to steam vegetables. I like to roast them in the oven. So I'm not too much help on that. But there is a recipe in today's reel for, pardon me, for an oil-free lentil sloppy Joe recipe from Simply Quinoa. If you follow that website, fabulous recipes. And I make that in the crock pot. So I know that some of the Instapots do have a crock pot feature. We'll talk a little bit later about Jill Nussenow, the registered dietitian who calls herself Veggie Queen. I spoke to her last night, and she does not use the crock pot feature on her Instapot, but she knows everything there is to know. Um, this one, next question, and thank you, Annette. The next question is from Anna C., who had a very interesting question about food that is offered in assisted living homes, facilities, whatever you want to call them. So I placed a phone call to a friend of mine last night who was the administrator of an assisted living facility in Baltimore, Maryland. We had a lengthy conversation. I'm going to give you our half an hour conversation in about 2 or 3 minutes. So one thing that you can think about, Anna, is to contact the provider or the doctor or nurse practitioner who oversees care and meet with them to see if they can write a doctor's order for a specific diet. So perhaps it would be a 2-gram low sodium diet or a plant-based diet, or please increase roughage into the diet, et cetera, et cetera. So that is something that your sister might like a little bit more than that. There are different ways to work with the assisted living facility. They do not have most do not have registered dietitians on board. They do have a director of nutrition who might be familiar with the food that's being provided. Many assisted living companies will outsource their food from other companies to come in and make the food. So I think working with a provider. And the other thing I was going to suggest, because I get a lot of calls to do this, can I go into an assisted living facility and teach a cooking class? And so that begins the plant for the first seed of going in and cooking or making something as delicious as one of my favorite Ruby recipes, which is our tuna-less salad that everyone seems to like. And I don't use the word vegan with older adults for many reasons, but I use the word plant-based because it seems to be more widely accepted. So talk to the doctor, teach a class, and also see what your sister likes to eat the best. I do understand that when it is mealtime, that everyone goes to a dining hall and they usually have assigned seats. And I think that having that social aspect is also very important. So good luck. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly at char@rouxbe.com. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that I can. Okay, this is from Michelle D. This seems to be like Instapot Tuesday. When I don't know how many vegetables you're cooking, I don't know how big the well is in your Instapot, but generally speaking, rule of thumb is 1.5 to 2.5 cups of either water or your favorite stock. And that should do the trick. If you have, sometimes you'll put a steamer in the bottom, steam basket in the bottom, so that might help. But again, I'm rather old school. I think I remember that when I was gathering supplies that I needed for my Ruby class, that I got a bamboo steamer, which to this day I use and absolutely love because it's just so easy. And if the power goes out, I don't have to worry about anything. So. Okay. So this one is from Sheila B. And Sheila has a question about cooking in one of those black cast iron lodge pans or whatever brand you like. And that's sort of tricky because when you look back historically to what you may have cooked in your black cast iron pan, there was probably some sort of grease or something like that used in such. However, if you follow a no oil saute, they're perfect because they retain heat while you're cooking. The other thing I recommend to a lot of people, this is a liner for an air fryer, and that you can also line a cast iron pan so that if you were making pancakes, this will help to make the pancakes in the cast iron skillet. You won't get that deep brown on the first piece. Um, raw batter on here will be a very light brown, but once they've cooked on both sides, you can then expose them directly to the cast iron, and that should work well for you. But no oil saute works beautifully, and I think that's a good way to go. And that was a great question because I get a lot of questions about that sometimes when I'm reviewing an assignment from one of the students. So thank you very, very much for that. The next question is from Molly B, who has a question about date syrup. She is a follower of Chef AJ and wanted to know if she could use date syrup in place of other syrups while baking. So first I wanted to show you that this is a bottle of date syrup. It's also called Silan, Silan. And I have this jar here, and I'm just going to show you. It's a little bit more viscous than maple syrup, but you can see that it is rather thick and viscous. So when you are cooking with any kind of syrup, you have to also consider the other ingredients that you're using, such as your flour and other dry ingredients to that. I spoke to Chef Fran this morning, and she does discuss this type of sweetener cooking in the Essential Vegan Desserts program. Her recommendation is to take notes while you are preparing the recipe and see what works and what didn't work, and just keep your notes so that the next time that you go to use it, you'll have some sort of foundation to help you get to the next step of what you're baking. I'm a creature of habit. I either use maple syrup or I use organic maple sugar, which I discussed last week when I was here. So you're a scientist in the kitchen. Plant-based baking is a terrific skill. Chef Fran will be back in a couple of weeks to do a live event with you, and that might be a terrific question to ask her. But let me see if there's anything else that she recommended today. Yep, she said testing and notes is the key. So thank you, Chef Fran, for that. I really appreciated that. This next question is from Camille, who has a question about vegetables and then shocking them after they are cooked. And they're cooked to retain, they're shocked rather in an ice bath to retain flavor and appearance, so that when you have shocked them and removed them from the ice bath, and I like to dry them on a kitchen towel, you can reheat them, whether you're going to make a stir fry or whether you're going to throw them into a soup or a stew. You would throw them in towards the end so they don't turn that gray color that the broccoli I had growing up was, because my mother would overcook it for hours and hours. So yes, you can cook those vegetables that have been cooked previously, that have been shocked with that beautiful, beautiful green. You don't want to overcook them because you still want to see that beautiful deep green or orange or whatever color your vegetable happens to be. That's a great question. Thank you, Camille. So I read Claudia's question, and it was about oil, and she wanted to know how critical is a no oil diet to someone who does not have heart disease nor a family history of heart disease. I can tell you that this is one of the most debated questions in the plant-based arena. You have a group of physicians and dietitians on this side who say oil is not good for you, and then you have the other side who say oil is good for you in moderation. If you have read Dr. Esselstyn's book, 2009 bestseller, he will say that moderation kills. Oils are highly, highly processed foods for people who may have heart disease or a history of heart disease. The processed oils can be an irritant to the endothelium, the internal linings of your arteries. So he advises all of his patients to avoid oil at all costs. I say this is something that you have to come to grips with about how you choose to cook. I can tell you for the people that I know who have had heart disease or who have reversed their heart disease, living an oil-free life is the way to go for them. But again, it's highly individualized. If I talk to my friend Jeff Novick, he is standing on the no oil podium, and I have a long list of no oil friends. And as you know, I'm a no oil person as well, and it has seemed to work for me and kept me healthy. And there we go. So I say it's individual. I'm just sharing what I know from Dr. Esselstyn's book. And, a quick, very funny, well, not funny, but a quick story is that when Bill Clinton, former president, had his heart attack in 2009, this book had just come out, and Bill Clinton got a copy of the book and went on David Letterman and mentioned this this book, and how the book had saved his life. And from that appearance on the David Letterman show, this book has become almost a guideline for so many people who want to prevent or reverse heart disease. Just a little inside story there. Claudia, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, char@rouxbe.com. It takes 4,000 olives to make a gallon of olive oil. And you have taken all of the fiber and all of the other nutrients out of that olive to make the oil. So there are a lot of things to consider, but thank you so much for asking that question. I really appreciate it. Oh, this is a question from Deborah G. I just so happen to have, Deborah, my caraway pan here, and it's very heavy. Here is the inside. It comes with a special sponge. I use wood when I'm stirring or making things or whatever, and it cleans up in a New York minute. It makes amazing pancakes. It's great for no oil saute. I just absolutely love it. I will share with you that the top of the pan has this little hole right here. And the other day I was making some soup and I picked up the pan and turned it this way, and steam came right out of this little hole. And I got a second-degree burn on my arm. So that's my cautionary tale for you, but it's a wonderful pan, very versatile. I don't put it in the dishwasher. I wash it by hand. It comes with a special sponge, as I mentioned. So thanks for asking that question. It's a really good product. So the next question, and I hope that I'm saying Madhurima's name correctly. It's about Indian cooking, that she's mentioning that spices often are required to be tempered in oil. And my response to that is that if you look at the recipe for making the sunflower nutritional yeast topping that we make in, I think, one of the vegetable units, you're supposed to take your spices and first saute them dry in a pan so that their natural oils are released. So you have a couple of things that you can do if you have, let's say, a whole spice, like a peppercorn, for example, or star anise or whatever. You can roast it in a pan and then grind it so that it will be fresh and fragrant and add a wonderful flavor to your dish. I do believe that there is a link about cooking without oil when using Indian food. When I make Indian food, this is what I do. I dry saute my spices, and then I grind them up, and they are very, very fragrant and have the aroma of something that's very, very fresh. So that's a great question, and thank you very much for posting it. I hope that is helpful to you. You have the website for Jill Nussenow. I'm calling her an Instapot expert, but actually she's an expert on many things like fermentation, foraging mushrooms. She's a wonderful chef, and please give her a follow. Like myself, she's from Long Island, and so we have that Long Island bond together. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, one question here. Oops, hold on a second. All right. So the next question is from Michael B. Michael B, this is the best question because a while ago, Chef Eric had asked me to test something that required a very specific bean, and I went to a specialty store. And when I got home, the beans were not good, and they were purchased in bulk. So what I suggest to do is to use a reputable bean or grain company. Right now, I'm on a kick to get my beans from Rancho Gordo. They have a good expiration date on the bottom of their package. There are other brands that are also just as good. Uh, but you want to check the expiration date is always the most important thing. And if the expiration date is on one of those little stickers that somebody has stuck on there, sometimes that always isn't as reputable. So what I'll do is take a Sharpie marker and write down the day that I purchased it, and I won't keep it for more than 6 months. So using fresh beans really does make a difference in the flavor of the food that you eat. And that's my suggestion for that. But that's a really, really good question. The next question is from Mary G, and it's about making substitutions for fat and processed sugar. And what are my tips? She knows I don't use oil exactly. So I think that you follow the recipe as it is in a cookbook. If it calls for a quarter of a cup of oil, you're going to use a quarter of a cup of unsweetened applesauce. The ratio is exactly the same. If it called for a half a cup of oil, you would use half a cup of a mashed sweet potato. You've also got bananas, so the ratios I find stay the same. However, again, it depends on the flour or grain that you are using. So a lot of it, going back to what Fran said, comes to how comfortable you are translating a recipe and what it looks like and what its texture is like and how well that it cooks. And are you cooking it in a silicone pan? Are you using a liner? Are you putting it in loaf pan and using parchment paper that's fit well? Because your parchment paper should fit well into any 9x9 baking pan or whatever baking pan that you use so that things can cook evenly and aerate well. So another good question. I have to tell you that sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and say, oh, I think I'm going to make a batch of Mighty Muffins. And it's to the point now where it's almost second nature to me. And I'll look at the batter and say, oh, I think it needs a little bit more oat flour because the consistency might be too loose or something like that. So just keep practicing and keep baking and keep taking notes as Chef Fran has suggested. This is from Van. Hi, Van. How are you today? He's not finding time to attend the Ultimate Cooking course. What kind of pans and liquids can I use to fry vegetables and tofu without oil? Well, we had just spoken about this beautiful caraway pan. This is a beautiful, beautiful pan, and it browns beautifully. It cooks quickly. It's easy to clean, so I do like this. However, I also like using stainless steel. The only thing about the stainless steel is it might require a little elbow grease when it's time to cook with it. Liquids, water, a vegetable stock. Some people like to use diluted fruit juices. I'm not a fan of that. Some people like to use vinegars. I'm not a fan of that either. But I think water or stock or a cooking wine or wine, if you cook with alcohol in your house, are other fine ways to deglaze and cook with liquids. So, always feel free to reach out, Van, to student services if you're having difficulty finding the time to get to your classwork. And our director of student services is always happy and willing to work with students when time might be one of the ingredients that's difficult to get a hold of. So thank you very much for that question. This is from Melissa B. And it's about a gluten-free sandwich bread recipe that calls for 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. How much sweet potato would you use using 3 to 4 tablespoons? Made it too liquidy. What different types? So first of all, I would take a look at the flour that you were using, and I don't know if you made something from scratch or if you used the Bob's Red Mill. And sometimes it's best to start out with less and then add as you go. But what was the liquid that you used in that? You might want to cut back on the liquid, keep the fat the same, whether you use bananas or applesauce or whatever, but maybe cut back on your liquid a little bit. I often bake gluten-free for clients and things like that, and find that the liquid is the most interesting thing. And also, if you're using oat, almond, whatever kind of milk you like, make certain that the bottle has been shaken well before you decide to bake with it, because sometimes the residue that helps bind things together stays at the bottom of the bottle. That's a really good question, Melissa. I think trial and error, but I'm gonna say to look at the liquid that you're using. So that's my recommendation. Oh, this is a question from Sue M. Are the videos from the course and these Q&A proprietary? This person, Sue, would like to share them with her local diabetes support group. Several may be interested in signing up for the course. So you can go to YouTube and type in Rouxbe and then name the recipe, and it will be there. The Q&A sessions are always online. Much of the recipes that are specifically in the course, however, are proprietary. So hope that's helpful. I'm always on YouTube Googling Rouxbe YouTube tunaless salad. So that should work for you. So hope that's helpful. This is from Melissa B. again. What are my favorite spices? So the answer would be all, but I do have, I'm a big user of turmeric. And what I do is I have this little bottle from Watkins. I like their spices a lot. You can find them at the grocery store. But I buy a bag of organic turmeric, and then I refill this because I use this a lot, whether I'm making a turmeric latte or I'm making savory oats like Ann Esselstyn makes. This bottle is perfect, and the big bottle is also very helpful. Anti-inflammatory. If I'm feeling a cold coming on, I'll start having some extra turmeric in a tea or putting it into my food or whatever. You also heard me say a few weeks or last week that I am a big fan of ginger. I love fresh ginger. I use it a lot. This is the best dried ginger. This is from Burlap and Barrel. And Fran had the president and co-founder of Burlap and Barrel on her podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I learned so much. But this is a fabulous product, and this I just keep buying because I don't want to compromise the flavor and the single origins of this wonderful, wonderful spice. And one more, again from Watkins, is I'm a big cinnamon fan. I put it in my overnight oats. I add it to lots of different soups and such because it adds a little bit of spiciness to it. And if you are a fan of making our pho recipe, you'll notice that we have cinnamon sticks because it does lend a nice herbal flavor. So those would be 3, but I love garlic, basil, parsley, and I have every fresh herb that you can think of. I also have in dry form. So that's about that for that. But next time we meet, I'm going to send you a photo of my spice drawer because I have inverted 2 sets. I have 8 of them, 5x7 plexiglass frames that I've turned upside down. And all of my spices sit on an angle. And when I open the drawer, I can see everything, and it makes life very, very easy. So I will share that with you next time we meet. Very good question, Melissa. I'm curious to hear what your 3 favorite spices are as well. So the next question has to do about Thanksgiving. And when I first went to my very first Engine 2 immersion in Austin, Texas, many years ago, Ann Esselstyn was talking about Thanksgiving, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how can you have Thanksgiving without a turkey? Then I have come to find that beautiful root vegetables, a kabocha squash, lots of rice dishes, beautiful, beautiful, bountiful vegetables, a gravy. I make seitan from scratch using an easy recipe in the back of the Engine 2 cookbook, and it's the easiest recipe I know. However, I will say that the best recipe is the barbecue brisket seitan recipe that is in the Plant Pro course, because that is a beautiful, beautiful piece of seitan. But you can make a really delicious turkey gravy, lots of poultry spices, etc., etc. Lots of breads, cranberry walnut bread, orange bread, muffins, cornbread, etc., etc. It becomes a big bounty. You know, you can make exactly what it is that you make for Thanksgiving, but without the animal portion to your meal, and it will still be a delicious and lovely meal. And what happens if you get invited to someone's house? You take a couple of excellent side dishes and a beautiful, beautiful crustless pumpkin pie that comes out almost like a pumpkin flan that everybody will devour. So, good questions, because Thanksgiving is fast approaching. This is from Tony C. What's my take on air fryers? I love an air fryer. Um, I've had many. I actually have two in my kitchen. One is one of those box units that is really easy, and it has a stainless steel basket in it. Fun to cook with stainless steel, not aluminum. I have a one that looks like a hair dryer from the 1960s, and I always line the basket with these pieces of parchment paper rounds, as they're called. If you do use parchment paper, I'm going to tell you that you need to cut it to size, because if not, the edges that stick up can easily cause a fire, and you don't want to do that. I enjoy an air fryer because it's easy to cook and it's easy to clean. If you're concerned about the lining, these are wonderful for protecting your food. That's my take on that. By the way, I think it's something's going on Amazon or something where you can get things cheaper today. And today on a talk show, they were talking about air fryers. So I was only half listening, however. So this is from Sue M again. She's using a grain called camu or kamut, depending upon how you say it. It says to boil in liquid and toss the liquid after cooking. The water is colored. So I don't know, but when I do cook with it, I always rinse it off really, really well. And then I cook it, and the water isn't quite as discolored as you're discussing. I don't throw them out, but I think rinsing them well under warm water in a strainer of some sort is the best way to go, just like you would do for lentils and other things like that. This is from Tony C again. Tony, cast iron is great. You can use a cast iron pan if you want. I happen to like using cast iron in the form of Le Creuset, and I'm pointing because there might be one behind me, because they cook quickly, because the metal retains heat, and they cook beautifully, and they're also very easy to clean. So this is from Michelle. How do I prepare rice to have a lower glycemic index? I don't know the answer fully to that question, but I think that in the plant-based arena, looking at glycemic index is something that is specific to a certain lifestyle related condition, such as type 2 diabetes or something like that. So I'm not going to answer the question, because I cook it in the rice cooker, it comes out beautifully. You're maybe going to have a half to 1 cup of it as a serving. And I think using a brown rice is going to be better than using a jasmine or basmati or something else like that. So I definitely go with a brown rice to answer that question a little bit. Back to Tony. Hi, Tony. So I've been seeing jarred salads on YouTube stating it helps the salad stay fresh longer and looks nice. So would you recommend someone selling jar salads? Well, actually, there's a chef in Philadelphia who started a very successful company doing just that. He was even on Shark Tank. His name is Jared Cannon. And he has his in plastic jars. Some people are opposed to using plastic jars. I think selling them in a glass container would probably be a good selling point. And if they are private clients, when you deliver your next group of salads, then you take back the ones that they have left for you. However, plastic is much more cost effective if you're concerned about margin. And there are many different philosophies on making salad dressings in glass jars, and they will keep very well. Some people like to put the dressing at the bottom and then put a sturdy green on top of that. I personally prefer to stuff it with those different layers of vegetables and then take a 4-ounce container that will fit inside the opening of the jar so that the greens don't get overly saturated with the dressing. But I think it's a great idea. I love that. I would buy a salad in a New York minute. Very good. For women with endometriosis, what should they stay away from? I heard coffee and seed oils and to go whole food plant-based. That's much too much of a medical question for me to answer. I think a good resource would be Dr. Christy Funk or Dr. Monica Agarwal. One is a cardiologist, one is a breast surgeon, but I have to say that whole food plant-based certainly seems to be a plethora of helpfulness in conditions that can arise in men and women. Okay, Tony C is not using oil, but she loves fried oyster mushrooms. I don't eat them all the time, so simple. Do the same thing that you would do to make your batter and what you would dredge it in, and then you can put it in your air fryer or you can put it in a pan, but you've got to cover it with a brick that might be covered in either parchment paper or aluminum foil or both, so that you can weigh it down so that there is that pressure and also that there is direct heat contacts. You can also use your air fryer and they will come out really, really well. I'm going to say that it's very hard to replicate the texture, aroma, and flavor of something that has been deeply fried. However, once you cross over to the plant-based no oil side, you'll come to really appreciate the flavors in those mushrooms. And you know, when we do the mushroom assignment from our students and I read the reviews of their assignments, they always say, oh, I never knew that mushrooms tasted so good. And that's because the oils can actually mask the true flavor of a vegetable. So good luck with that. And also follow Derek Sarno. He is the mushroom king. He does use oil, but you can easily take his recipes and omit the oil. You might find that helpful. Okay. This is from Karen R. We have a Ninja Pro blender. Do you feel that it is powerful enough for making dressing and sauces smooth, or should I invest in a Vitamix? So right now, I just happen to know this because Vitamix sent me an email. They're having a sale on their refurbs, and you can get a refurbished Vitamix with a 5-year guarantee. A new one has a 7-year guarantee. The refurbs have a 5-year guarantee. You can get them for around $300. For the Ninja, if you are going to make the white bechamel sauce, you have to make it in smaller amounts so that you can get that velvet creaminess of the sauce. If you have the Ninja, you can also take we'll say you're making a bechamel, and I would put it through a double mesh strainer so that you get any residue taken out, but you'll still get a beautifully creamy sauce. We have a Ninja here. I find that it does a great job. I do find that 7-year-old Vitamix behind my back is sort of the king or queen of my kitchen. So you don't have to go out and get a Vitamix though. You can work that Ninja Pro blender and it'll do, I think, a good job. It has a lot of settings on it, a lot of buttons and things like that. This is from Annette M. She has a bottle of wine that was bottled in the 90s, being told wine flavor expires. I contacted the winery. They do not recommend drinking it, but could it be used to cook with? What do you think? Well, I do have a motto, and the motto is if in doubt, throw it out. So if that's the way that you are feeling or thinking about this wine, I would not use it. But that's my own personal experience, and let's see how it works out for you. Melissa wants to see my spice drawer. You know what I'll do if you follow us at Rouxbe Plants on Instagram, at Rouxbe Plants, one word. I will post a quick video, maybe 10 seconds long, so that you can see how it's set up in alphabetical order and how easy it is to know where all my spices are all at once. So I will do that. Okay, we're back to Sue and the kamut. She soaks it overnight and rinses, then cooks, and is still a bit. Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it at all. I think if you have done all of it, I would, however, look at the expiration date of the grain and to see where you purchased it from and look at that date and make sure that it's in date. So we have had a great amount of questions. I have enjoyed every single one of them. And back to that fat question, we've got bananas, we've got mashed cooked sweet peas, we've got applesauce unsweetened. And, you know, if you have any kind of tofu in your refrigerator, whether it's silken or firm or whatever, it always works in a pinch. Remember that there are 3 grams of fat in tofu, so it's going to, I like cooking with a silken tofu when I bake because it does give it a nice texture. Kind of resembles using a fat. So, with that said, I am off to Wayne, Pennsylvania, because as a member of Les Dames d'Escoffier, I, along with 5 authors, have put together an event to showcase 5 local authors to Philadelphia, Chef Fran Costigan being one of them. And the funny thing is that exactly 11 years ago, Chef Fran was on her way to the same bookstore when she was a New Yorker, and her chocolate book had just come out. So if you are in the Philadelphia area and you want to come and meet Fran, please come to 116 North Wayne Avenue in Wayne, Pennsylvania. I'm signing off from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. I'm Char Nolan. Have a great day, and I hope to see you soon.